This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. Today is Friday, the 10th of October. My name is Neil Saravandamutu. I am joined by Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
We have some sad news to start with out of City Hall. So could you start us off on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So we found out earlier this week that the mayor's chief of staff, Robin Guest, passed away. She had left. She had gone on a leave of absence. She had cancer back in February. And I think it came as a huge shock to people because I don't think many people knew exactly how sick she was. She had a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. She died last Sunday. Robin has been sort of a fixture at City Hall for decades, right? She worked for Bob Shirelli back when he was the mayor. She was a senior person in Kent Kirkpatrick's office when he was a city manager. She worked in the clerk's office, and she was a senior policy person in Mayor Jim Watson's office for many, many years. And so John and I, we would see her all the time. When I was at the City Hall, when I was at the Ottawa Citizen, my office was at City Hall, right across the office from John's office when he was at the Ottawa Sun. These are people you just see around and you talk about things, you run into them. Robin was super smart. She had a great reputation. She always worked sort of behind the scenes. And, I have a kind of a weird story or anecdote about Robin. Yeah. And it might be odd to talk about it in this circumstance. But, in the last few years that I was at CBC, Ottawa, I'm pretty sure that Robin did not like me. And I say this actually because if I were in her shoes, I would not like me either. I wrote some stories. They involved her brother and her husband, never her. But, and as much as you try not to make stories personal, they're very personal to the people who are in them, right? And I'm saying this weird story because despite what I'm sure she must have felt about me, she was never anything but courteous and professional. When I would see her, when I'd have to talk to her about stories. And I just think that that's that's the ideal of what we want when we are in public discussions. And, when I talk to other senior staff members, both current and former, they say the same thing with Robin, that you could disagree about something, but then she was, that was fine. They were still friends. They were able to work on things together. And, I could see it myself. And from everyone, she says she loved the city and she worked for a long time to build the city. And there's a lot of people at City Hall this week who are really devastated.
Yeah. John, did you have any encounters with Robin?
Well, like Joanne said, I was shocked to hear about her death. And I spent I think 13 years working out of City Hall, out of one of the two bureaus there. And you develop a community. City Hall is a community of people like any other institution is. And you talk to people in your community all the time, but you really never get to know them on a deeper level, especially when you're a reporter. There's kind of this maybe odd relationship maybe between the journalists and staff and sometimes city councilors too. And so, you talk to Robin so much over the years, but never really got to, learn about her on a deeper level. But I read her beautifully written obituary, and I got to learn so much more about her and kind of the places she's been, what she's done. I see her fingerprint on all these city files, LRT, Art Gallery, the new super library that's being built. And she's kind of just been, she's been behind the scenes and just been a great public servant. So, I wrote this down from her obit because I thought it was really interesting. It says she believed her city, country, and world could always be better, and then she went to work. I thought that was just a great little line, and it's a beautifully written obituary. So we're thinking about her family and her friends certainly today.
Yeah, that's right. Our condolences to her family, her friends, her colleagues. So let's jump into our discussion for today. So the last couple of weeks have been very busy, jam-packed for us. Interestingly, the last 7 days have been a little less frantic. And I would say it's really consolidation of some of the issues that we have been talking about. And that's what we will get to wrap some of those up today. So let's start with the housing acceleration plan. So, John, this was discussed at council on Wednesday. what did council conclude about what it's going to do with this housing acceleration plan?
Well, council approved 53 recommendations, and pretty much all of them made it through the vetting and then the approval process. But one, and we talked about this on the pod last week, didn't we, guys? About the community benefit charges that have been collected from developers before they start building. And so on this, council voted to reduce the charge. So I think, as Joanne explained last week, the charge was based on 4% of the land value. And now council has decided to reduce the charge to 2% of the land value, but it goes down to 1% in major transit areas. So they didn't get rid of it completely like some people wanted to do. They just reduced it. And that was something that came up at the joint committee meeting and then was ratified by council. And at the same time, the city is not going to give back any of the community benefit charge revenue that it's already collected. So we have a new policy on housing. Overwhelming agreement on council, and so, which I mean is a bit surprising in a way. I mean, it looked like everyone was on board with most of the recommendations on what is a major piece of policy, and now their regulations. So what they generally cover, just very, very high level, they cover city regulations, they cover, the fees being collected by the city, but also the culture at City Hall too, to move these development applications and processes through at a much quicker pace.
Right. Okay. Now, Joanne, the plan largely seems to be about incentivizing private builders to build more. Now, councillors Kavanagh and Menard, and probably one or two others, went out of their way to say we actually need to be doing more on nonprofit housing. Do you think that these changes that John talked about, these will they do enough for nonprofit housing?
Yeah, I don't think that this plan was focused on that, right? And so nonprofit housing does get some breaks on fees, and it gets some breaks on property taxes depending on the situation. So that is helpful. And some of that was through the city, and some of those breaks are through the province. But yeah, I mean, the fact is building housing that's below market rent, that's going to take government involvement, right? The private sector is not going to do that. So we've got to use city land and federal lands that we have in the city, and basically more or less give that land actually to nonprofit developers. I was listening to the Alliance to End Homelessness, Katie Burkhold Harris, and she says, and as we know, those of us who follow this, the biggest expense is the land value. It's a big expense for private developers. It's a huge expense for non-profit housing developers. So that is where those will be huge steps forward. This plan, it doesn't, it's fine. Like it waives a few fees, and they already had some fees that were waived, but it's not something that actually focuses on that. And I think that needs to be a separate plan.
Okay. John, Councillor Leeper talked about how the city over the years had built up ossified processes. And in fact, the mayor, when he was describing this plan, called it his words were the most housing friendly city in Canada. That's what this plan would allow Ottawa to become. Do you think that's a fair assessment of what this plan could achieve?
Well, it's interesting because as Mayor Sutcliffe was delivering his closing remarks on the recommendations, he was, acknowledged that we don't really know if this new policy will create new homes. We don't know. He used the analogy of going down the Ottawa River with a cup of water and pouring in a cup every day and not really knowing the impact to the river. And same with this policy, 53 new things that are going to come into City Hall's bag of tools, I guess. But we really don't know the impact. Maybe we will know the impact within 5-10 years. But one thing that I remember Glenn Gower said during the meeting, he said, well, at least this is something the mayor can bring to the upper levels of government and show that the city of Ottawa is trying to do something with the powers that it has on fees, culture, regulations. So,
Yeah.
and I go back to, the huge support on council for almost all the recommendations in the report. And it was interesting too, because Mayor Sutcliffe had like a bag of bouquets to read out, right? He collected all these great comments from, I guess, the public, maybe people who are tuned in to municipal politics about how great this new acceleration plan is, and I remember him saying that he asked his staff for a one-pager about all the great compliments, but they couldn't. It had to be 4 pages worth of compliments. I don't think he read them all out, but the fact that there was so much
Thank goodness.
buy-in on the plan, I think that's pretty positive. I think for this council.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I can just add my thoughts, it looks like it's a great plan. Like you get rid of red tape and unnecessary processes that have just become part of the process at City Hall over the years. And as you know, these processes, they just harden year to year. What I worry about is, and I think the mayor's right, that much of the building process is far out of control of City Hall. And I do worry, as I mentioned on the pod last week, that we are moving into more difficult economic time when a lot of private builders are quite sensibly probably just going to be sitting out and just waiting for market conditions to improve. So I do worry that we will put this plan in place and we will not see a lot of market response. We will not see a lot of supply response. And that's why, Joanne, the question I had about non-market housing, I actually feel that perhaps what we need to be doing right now is really putting more money into capitalizing our efforts towards non-market housing. We are, as we're going to talk.
This plan's not going to do it. I mean, it needs something, right? You're quite right. And this is not the plan for that.
I'd like to turn to issue number 2, which is the speed light cameras. So again, the Premier wants to ban speed light cameras. Now, Council is planning to introduce a motion that asks the provincial government to change its decision on speed cameras. So Councillor Tierney introduced some modifications to what that bill should say. And what's important here is that the city is asking the clerk to send that motion when it's approved to the provincial government. So I bring this up because what's interesting is that if you look at what other cities have done, City of Toronto, Olivia Chow sent a letter directly to the Premier saying that she doesn't agree with this decision. Likewise, another 22 Ontario mayors sent a joint letter to the province saying we don't agree with this. Interestingly, Ottawa did not sign that letter, and nor has Ottawa sent its own letter to the mayor. So I'd say the one reaction we did get was during the post-council media availability, the mayor did come out and say, I do not agree with this decision. I think that was the first time that he was really very clear about it and was willing to say, I'm not in alignment with the Premier on something. So, Joanne, can I ask you, do you think Mayor Sutcliffe is personally doing enough to stand up to the Premier on this issue of speed cameras?
Yeah, I think when this issue first came up, was a couple of weeks ago, I think he did say, "Oh, I'm disappointed with that decision," and I have to confess that because I set my hair on fire, I'm furious, and I would have liked to see a little bit more forceful reaction to say why this is wrong, why it's dangerous, and why we don't agree. And I was surprised, to be honest, that he didn't write his own letter to the Premier's office, or I'm not sure why this motion has to be discussed in 2 weeks, right? I mean, we walk motions onto council all the time. So why we have to give a notice of motion for this, I was surprised by that. And I know that Council Tierney, his motion, which was seconded by Councillor Alan Hubley, they did talk to the mayor about it. And I actually, when I heard that he was working on a motion with the mayor, I thought the mayor was going to second it or maybe even table it. So I was kind of surprised not to see the mayor's name on it. Now, I am speculating. I'm assuming that the mayor, if we asked him right now, he would say a motion by all of council sent officially to the Premier's office perhaps sends a larger message. Not sure why we couldn't do both. But in the public, when I heard Olivia Chow's, the mayor of Toronto's comments, quickly talking about how this is wrong, there was part of me that thought, I wish our mayor was saying something like that.
Yeah, I agree. You need to stand up for these things. John, can I ask you, Mayor Sutcliffe did not sign on to that joint letter that 22 other mayors signed. And he said it's because Ottawa's case is unique, that we have our own specific concerns around speed cameras. Is that true?
Well, I mean, I haven't counted all the speed cameras and taken stock about where they are. I take them at his word that they're mostly in school zones, and so that is the reason
They are.
why.
I looked on the website.
Okay,
There's only a
perfect.
handful that are not. They're
Yeah.
mostly all high schools. Yeah.
So that's the mayor's rationale why he didn't sign on in the larger letter, and they're going to go it alone at the city of Ottawa with its own advocacy, because they think their situation about how we use our speed cameras here is much different according to the city compared to what other municipalities do. But guys, is this like a recognition from Mayor Sutcliffe that he might be reading the tea leaves here on Premier Ford, who he's got to know over the past 3 years, and maybe realizing that, you know what, the premier is digging in on this, and like now it's time to play some, like, mind your political capital a bit, and we're going to talk about uploading the LRT system to the province, and those are going to be heavy negotiation. So if you're Mayor Sutcliffe, and by the way, to you guys' point, he had a hand in writing this motion coming to council on the speed cameras. Like, he's very clear. He said this in his press conference. I worked on this motion with Councillor Tierney. I worked on to help massage this motion. And so I'm just wondering is if the reason why he's really hands-on is that because he knows there's larger discussions to be had that directly impact the city of Ottawa, the LRT system and the upload. And so I'm wondering if that's why they're taking a little bit of a different approach compared to other municipalities in the province.
I mean, I think that could be valid. And I think that we saw this, I can't remember what the issue was, but we saw another controversial measure from actually it was bike lanes. When the bike lanes happened, and remember the premier was talking about possibly doing this on O'Connor Street in Ottawa, so it had implications for us too. And the mayor was very quiet on that issue. And I think reading the tea leaves was that he was in the middle of his Fairness for Ottawa campaign, trying to get more funds out of the province, and didn't want to upset that process. That may well be what's going on here, because we will be talking about uploading the LRT, as you say. But I have to say that I'm disappointed that the city of Ottawa did not sign on to that joint letter. And I actually see it as symptomatic of a city that is just not working with others. I mean, there are major issues that all municipalities across Ontario and indeed across Canada are facing, particularly on a lot of fiscal issues that, just fiscal imbalances that will need to be corrected somehow. And cities need to work together. We can't have everyone operating in their own little sandbox and saying, this is my kingdom, I'm somehow different. Like, how we can possibly be different in terms of speed cameras doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Well, I do think one thing is we do spend our money. I think a lot of those cities spend their money on a variety of things, right? The money that we get from speed cameras, we do spend it on road safety issues. And I think that was one of those issues. Also, it's not like Toronto signed on to that, right? Like, it's a lot of smaller cities. So,
well, I mean,
sorry,
Hamilton and Mississauga. But I mean, Toronto had sent their letter previously, right? So there wasn't. Yeah. No, you know what? It's just, I think that when we look back on the mayor's Fairness for Ottawa campaign, which we don't really hear a lot about right now, I think the fatal flaw in that campaign is always that this is an issue that Ottawa faces, but so does every other city. And neither the province nor the federal government can respond to one city alone and say, okay, we're going to solve your problem, because as soon as they do, they open the door to everyone else. So I think that as a city, we need to start thinking more multilaterally. We need to start working more with other cities to be effective and stop this, go it alone approach. Anyways, that's my editorializing on this.
I've never heard you editorialize on this pod.
You get to do whatever you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? What's next?
So at the next council meeting, they will discuss Councillor Tierney's motion. And Councillor Tierney's motion says, basically, keep these speed cameras, but only in school zones. And because it does sound hard to say you are against giving out speeding tickets by schools, right? I mean, there are some people who will say, well, I got it at 11 o'clock at night. Well, I don't care. Like, don't speed. Yeah, was that yeah, sorry about that. And I think that's actually one of the, I think the letter, I think there are some folks, some municipalities who are suggesting that maybe there's a time on it, right? That late at night, they turn them off. Although I don't understand that. You really don't want people speeding around your streets. It's not a tax grab. Taxes, you got to pay your taxes. You don't have to actually get a speeding ticket, just don't speed. So it is interesting. I will be interested to see how this works. The province is expected to bring this legislation later this month when everybody finally goes back after their summer break to Queen's Park. It doesn't seem very popular to me.
That's right.
The canceling of the speed cameras. I mean, sure, there's a really mad segment that in Toronto is chopping down the cameras, but if you look at, there's a lot of surveys that say that people actually support it. There's people saying that they're getting letters, including for people who have gotten speeding tickets, Neil, who are still support them, right? Who say, yes, this is good. It does bring down traffic. The city's own studies have shown that at speed cameras in schools, that speeding is down to 16% from 87%. I'm not even sure what that measures, but anyway, they have some stats that show that it's lower. So I'll be interested to see if Premier Ford sticks to this. I think what Councillor Tierney thinks is this is a good out for the Premier to say, okay, like, I still don't like them, but we'll leave them in schools. I don't know if he'll buy that, but it's a very odd thing to like put your, draw a line in the sand over of taking down speed cameras.
Yeah. Well, John, I want to get your take on that because, the Premier's been pretty clear on this, that he's, come hell or high water, he wants to move forward. Yeah. But I think to your earlier point and to Joanne's point that the public does not seem to be with him on this one. So how do you think, what's your best guess as how this might play out?
Is this still a trial balloon by the Premier? I heard him referred to today in one of the editorials for a national newspaper as the Mayor of Ontario, because he's so obsessed with municipal issues, and he really is interested in those
especially Toronto.
Yeah, especially Toronto, those local government issues, which we're so fond of as well here on the pod. But here's the Premier really like seems to be going against the wave against many municipalities in Ontario. I'm still waiting to see if there's going to be a little bit of ground shift on this issue. And so, but I think that's where Mayor Sutcliffe and Councillor Tierney's motion is coming in, that maybe there's a way to convince the Premier, the Mayor of Ontario, that there's another way to approach this this ban, or to make it more like a partial ban. And how maybe, other mayors, they'll, line up behind Mayor Sutcliffe and say, yeah, at least keep it in school zones, please, Premier Ford. So we'll see what happens.
Also, I would just like to point everyone to LinkedIn, where former Ottawa Police Chief Charles Bordelot scolds MPP George Deroux, formerly a councillor, who says, oh, this is too much of a cash grab for people. He's, of course, George Deroux is the only PC MPP in Ottawa. And Charles Bordelot said, I am very disappointed in your government. And then he gives a whole long thing about why speed cameras are good. And I'm like, I don't know, like, you're going to take MPP Deroux or you're going to take former Chief Bordelot's view on things. I was surprised how public it was. I love that. I loved it, actually. So everyone should read that.
Let's move on to item 3, which is the LRT upload negotiations. Now, Council approved a motion that would allow the mayor and the city manager to negotiate with the Premier about the terms and the underlying principles of what would be involved in uploading the LRT from the city to the province. So, John, I want to start with, does the mayor actually, did we need this motion? Like, this has been something that we've been talking about since the last provincial election. So why are we starting, why does the city need this?
I don't think it does. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne and Neil, is this a notice of motion, or is this something that was approved, that motion that was approved by council?
No, it was approved yesterday.
Okay.
And it just sort of set out the terms of reference for if you're negotiating, here are the principles under which you should be negotiating, kind of thing.
There's nothing in the motion that suggested they needed this motion. The province wants to see full endorsement by council in order to come to the table. But I think you're right. It just kind of signals that it's still on the radar. And I think the mayor would want to get going on these talks as soon as possible so we can maybe promote a partial one or a big one ahead of next year's municipal election. He acknowledged in the press conference afterwards that it could take a long time. He cited uploading the 174, and that's like a lengthy negotiation. So it could take a long time, but if I'm him, I'm like, yeah, I want to get the ball rolling so that perhaps I might have something to bring to the electorate around this time next year. It's interesting because the motion 2 talks about getting the right deal for taxpayers, as if we need a motion for that. I hope they get the right deal for taxpayers. But there we are. So
Pay some of our money. That's a good deal.
make sure it's a right deal for taxpayers. So to your question, Neil, yeah, I think it is just kind of like signaling that this issue is still live, and just get it into the public that, the city wants to pursue this right away.
Okay. Joanne?
Yeah, I would say there are a few things, right? Because a couple of the terms are things like OC Transpo will still be operating the system, and it will be under the control of Toronto. Or I'm sorry, under the control of not Toronto, in fact, of Ottawa. That's exactly it. So I think it was, people like us and other folks are like, what will this upload look like? Are they going to take over the transit system? Is it going to go to Metrolinx? Blah, blah. And we don't know some of those, but I think it was to confirm to the public from the mayor that, okay, there are some things we're going to keep. And one of the things is we're going to keep control of operating our transit system, for example. So some things like that. Also, there have been talks going on, but to John's point, I think having this motion that you have these official terms of reference makes it seem like there's a real negotiation going on,
Right?
Which I have heard there are, but it would be a big boon, frankly, for Mayor Sutcliffe if he got some kind of memorandum of understanding before the election, because if they actually uploaded some capital costs and it saved hundreds of millions of dollars, that would be a giant game changer for us. But who knows what's going to happen? Yeah. Again, I still find it odd because we've already paid all of this money. So are we getting a refund on like stage 1 and 2 where we paid too much? Who knows? Is stage 3 ever going to be built? Again, skeptical that that's happening anytime in the next few years, but whatever. And so that is interesting. In the meantime, and I think, I know, Neil, you want to talk to this too, like we're trying to plan our financial future in this city, which isn't super rosy. And we're not alone. I don't want to say that it's just Ottawa, but we've been waiting for the asset management plan for like quite a long time. It is late.
Yes.
So despite legislation saying it should have been in, right? So where is that? And we're going to have a plan, frankly, plan A and plan B, but we really need a plan that assumes we're not getting any money, right? And then if we do get money, because it'll be years from now, it'll be well into the next term, then when we can revisit, but we need some kind of plan. And so it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Well, but Joanne, you remember that, so you mentioned these capital asset management plans, and I think the number is an $11 billion deficit that we have over the next 10 years. We currently have not seen the full plan for how the city will address that. And the reason that we were told from the city was that they were waiting until.
I don't know that I was ever told officially by the city. Like I heard that these are very like what people insiders were saying. That's one of the reasons they were told that. But
fair enough. But the fact that they're waiting for some clarity on the transit piece before they could talk about the rest of it. Now that effectively what we're hearing is that the transit piece is off the table for, and John, that was an exact quote from the mayor, for a long time. So I want to know, are we going to see that plan for how we address that deficit?
We have to see that. We can't not have one, right? And I do wonder if maybe they were thinking, if we can get it within the next year, do you think we could push it forward? And now that they know it's going to be years, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the mayor said it'll be years. They can't not have one. To your point, in the legislation, they were already supposed to have it. So you just can't push it down indefinitely. In fact, there's like thousands of huge reports coming down the pipe. I don't know how. We're gonna have a lot to talk about for many months here.
Just quickly, back on the LRT upload, I'm curious to know if this is going to be a power struggle between the city and the province about how to operate this thing going forward. So, the local governments usually know how to run things locally the best. And so I do wonder, and I see this kind of alluded to in the motion about the upload, about who's going to really have control over how the LRT system is going to run and operate. And if the city thinks...
Do you think that that's in the motion because maybe the province has suggested they want to run it? Like, why? Like, do you think that's been
it could
floated
be
somewhere?
This is just speculation. Look, this could be a nod to transit workers in the city. They just got off of a collective agreement being negotiated. Maybe that was something in the talks. But look,
and when are we going to hear about that? Like,
I don't know. I don't know.
Why has council not ratified that yet? What's going on?
Why is someone not asking for that to be reported out? I don't know. But
well, I don't think they've gone in and voted on it yet at council. I think the ATU they ratified it, but we're waiting for council.
We'll have to look into that.
I don't remember them going in camera to do it, but Yeah. Again, like Metrolinx does not run the TTC, the operator. So it would be very weird if they came in and did this. But
Yeah.
so
We'll see.
very mysterious. Any mysteries?
Well, I mean, Metrolinx, right? And that's I think the proposal is Metrolinx would obviously have a very significant role. Would they be running the LRT? And I know a lot of people in Toronto would say, oh, our experience with that has not been a good one.
They're not going to run the LRT in Toronto, so I don't know why they would run it here.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
They're not they just gave Eglinton Crosstown over to the TTC like a month or so ago.
Right,
like
but they
the
built
same
it,
way
right?
that
They built it.
RTG gave it over to us.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
They
pay to build it. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
But they're not operating it. That's the weird thing. Okay.
That means it's time for the lightning round. Yes. And in fact, we are going to touch on a story that I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot over the next few weeks, and that is Lansdowne. And it is going to be coming back to
Lansdowne
very soon. But it was also in the news this week. And so I wanted to talk about that quickly because John, the Ontario Minister of Sport, and I'm going to look at my notes here to make sure I get this right. He said that hopefully they will be establishing a new community sport and recreation infrastructure fund, and that the mayor could apply to that to help pay for Lansdowne. Now, the Minister of Sport said he doesn't know when this fund is going to be established. And there certainly hasn't been any discussion of what are the potential numbers that the city could get out of that fund for Lansdowne or something else. So but I have to ask you, undoubtedly, well, we're going to see a Lansdowne proposal come to council quite soon. Have we got enough here to to put some sort of provincial funding into that equation?
Because it's a lightning round, I'm going to be very brief and say yes. The provincial sport minister, Neil Lumsden, he was quoted saying, it's a fantastic idea, Lansdowne Park. So I'm going to guess that yes, that if the city's application looks nice, they're going to get some money for Lansdowne.
Okay.
The arena.
So Joanne, a similar question, and that is, if money were allocated from the province through this fund for Lansdowne, does that mean that other community recreational facilities in Ottawa would not would basically suffer?
Exactly my point. This is what I was saying. Oh, look, I didn't even know my dress did this. No, so that's what I was thinking. Is like, is there a max amount you can get over a certain amount of time? Where the city's looking for about $20 million for Lansdowne, but coming down the pipe is also, of course, the NHL arena at Le Breton that's going to want money. Although I suspect they're going to want more than $20 million, to be honest, from the province. But yeah, so how much do you get over a certain amount of time? Also, the NHL arena is not going to be built for, I think longer. It's going to be pushed down the road some more. So yeah, it's all in the details, right? When these funds come out, it's like, how do you score for them? What's the timeline? You have to be built by a certain amount of time, and yeah, the maximum you can get, and how often can you apply? So it could be a problem.
Okay.
I mean, it could be a problem for other facilities and other projects. Bell Dome is not getting any money.
Okay, well, listen, we will be talking more about Lansdowne in the weeks to come. And actually, another topic that we have looked at previously that we will be talking about next week is Taywin. So Taywin, that proposed land development in Southeast Ottawa, that is coming back to the committee table next week. And actually, I'll be making a public delegation myself on Wednesday. So I hope you both will have nice things to say about that delegation afterwards.
We'll dissect it next week.
Be nice, Neil.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for this week. Thank you to the two of you for this discussion. I would like to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. If you have any comments, please leave them. We love to hear those. Until then, this has been the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel.